The signal came at 3 in the morning, ship time. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his 4th cup of coffee in the quiet bridge of the Earth ship Phoenix when every communication system started screaming at once. The noise was so loud that Navigator Lisa Park jumped out of her chair and nearly spilled her hot chocolate all over the control panel. "What the hell is that?" shouted Engineer Carlos Vega from across the bridge. He was running diagnostics on the engine systems, and the sudden noise made him drop his tools. Amy Tucker, the weapons specialist, was already at her station trying to make sense of the incoming data. "It's a distress signal, Captain. But it's not like anything I've ever seen. It's broadcasting on every frequency at the same time." Jake set down his coffee cup and moved to the main display screen. The signal was coming through in waves, each one carrying the same message translated into thousands of different languages. The computer was working overtime trying to process all the different versions. "Put it through the main speakers, Jake," ordered. The voice that came through was not human. It sounded like music mixed with wind chimes, beautiful and sad at the same time. But the universal translator made the words clear enough for everyone to understand. "This is a message to all beings in the galaxy who can hear this transmission. Our name is the Zilani people of the Kepler sector. An ancient evil has awakened in our space. Our worlds are burning. Our people are dying. We have tried everything we know how to try. Please, if anyone can help us, we beg you to come. The coordinates are attached to this message. Time is running out for us." The message repeated 3 more times, then went silent. The bridge of the Phoenix stayed quiet for a long moment. Lisa was the first to speak. "Captain, I'm getting the coordinates now. The Kepler sector is about 4 days from here at full speed." Carlos pulled up the data on his engineering station. "I've heard of the Zilani before. They're peaceful people. They make art and music. Never hurt anybody. What could be attacking them that's so bad they're calling the whole galaxy for help?" Amy was already scanning through the Federation databases. According to this, the Zilani sent requests for help to every major power in the galaxy. The Vorthan Empire, the Nereid Collective, the Quantum Republic, all the big players. And, Jake asked, though he had a feeling he already knew the answer. All said no. The Vorthon said it was too dangerous. The Nereids calculated the risk was too high. The Quantum Republic ran the numbers and decided success was unlikely. Jake walked over to the main viewing window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying while the galaxy's greatest powers did math problems and decided it wasn't worth the risk. Lisa set course for the Kepler sector. Maximum speed. Captain Carlos said carefully, "We're just one ship. If the Vorthon Empire won't go, what can we do?" Jake turned back to face his crew. These were good people. Lisa Park had joined the crew 2 years ago, fresh out of the Navigation Academy. She was smart and careful and always double-checked her calculations. Carlos Vega had been with him for 5 years and could fix anything that could break on a starship. Amy Tucker was the best weapons officer he'd ever served with. But more than that, she was someone who never backed down from a fight when innocent people needed help. "Maybe nothing," Jake said honestly. "Maybe we get there and find out whatever. Destroyed the Zilani is too big for us to handle. Maybe we end up dead. But what's the alternative? We just ignore the call and go back to our patrol route? Pretend we never heard people begging for help?" Amy stood up from her station. "I say we go. If we can't stop whatever's attacking them, at least we can try to evacuate some of their people." "The Phoenix has cargo space," Carlos added. "Got it. Probably fit a few thousand refugees if we had to." Lisa was already plotting the course. "Coordinates locked in, Captain? We can be there in 4 days and 6 hours. Jake nodded. "Then that's what we do. But first, I'm sending a message to Earth Command. Admiral Wright needs to know what's happening out here." It took 20 minutes for the quantum communication link to connect with Earth. When Admiral Susan Wright's face appeared on the screen, looked tired. It was late at night Earth's time, and Jake knew she'd probably been working for 16 hours straight like she always did. "Captain Morrison," she said, "this better be important if you're waking me up. Admiral, we received a galaxy-wide distress. Call from the Zilani people in the Kepler sector. They're under attack by something they call an ancient evil. Every major power in the galaxy has refused to help them. Wright leaned forward in her chair. Behind her, Jake could see other officers gathering. General Frank Hayes and Director Nancy Rodriguez were both there, which meant this conversation was already being treated as serious business. "What kind of attack are we talking about, Captain?" Mee had been compiling the data while Jake talked. To Earth, she stepped forward and transmitted the information they'd received. Admiral the Zilani managed to send some visual data before their outer colonies went dark. Whatever's attacking them isn't just destroying their worlds. It's consuming them completely, eating the planets down to nothing. The screen went quiet while the Earth Command officers reviewed the data. Jake could see Admiral Wright's expression getting more serious as she read through the reports. "Captain," she said finally, "you said the other galactic powers refused to help? What makes you think we can do anything they can't?" Jake had been thinking about that question since they received the distress call. The truth was, he didn't know if they could do anything. The Vorthan Empire had ships 10 times more powerful than anything Earth could build. The Quantum Republic had weapons technology that was centuries ahead of human science. If they couldn't, or wouldn't help the Zilani, what chance did humanity have? But there was something else. Something Jake couldn't quite put into words, but felt in his bones. "Admiral," he said slowly, "I think the difference is that we're going to try." The Vorthons did their risk assessment and decided it wasn't worth it. The Nereids ran their calculations and determined the odds were bad. The Quantum Republic processed all the data and concluded that success was unlikely. But none of them seemed to have asked the one question that matters, which is what happens to the Zilani if nobody helps them. Admiral Wright was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Captain Morrison, you are authorized to render whatever assistance you can to the Zilani people." "I'm also sending word to every Earth ship in your area. If any of them want to join you, they have permission to do so." "Thank you, Admiral."
Don't thank me yet, Captain. If the galaxy's major powers are all afraid of whatever's out there, you might be flying into
"Something that will kill you all. Are you sure about this?" Jake looked at his crew again. Lisa was still plotting navigation routes. Carlos was already calculating how much extra power they could squeeze out of the engines. Amy was reviewing weapons systems and ammunition supplies. None of them looked afraid. They looked ready, Admiral. The Zilani are people who spend their time making beautiful things and sharing them with anyone who wants to see them. They've never hurt anybody. Now something wants to wipe them out just because it can. If we don't try to stop that, what's the point of having these ships and weapons and all this technology? What's the point of calling ourselves the good guys, Admiral? Wright smiled. For the first time since the conversation started. "God help us all, Captain. But you're right. Go save some artists. Earth Command out." The transmission ended, and Jake turned back to his crew. "Oh, you heard the Admiral. We're going to go try to stop an ancient evil that has the entire galaxy scared. Anyone want to change their mind?" Nobody moved toward the door. "All right, then," Jake said. "Lisa, take us to the Kepler sector. Maximum speed." The Phoenix turned away from its patrol route and headed toward the unknown. Behind them, across human space, other captains were receiving similar orders and making similar choices. God, but none of them knew that yet. All they knew was that somewhere in the galaxy, people needed help, and everyone else had said no. That was enough. Captain Kate Sullivan got the message while her ship Defiant was docked at Mining Station Alpha 7. She was in the middle of arguing with the station manager about overpriced fuel when her communications officer interrupted. "Captain, urgent message from Earth Command. Admiral Wright wants to speak with you immediately." Kate left the fuel negotiations to her first officer and hurried to the communication room. When Admiral Wright's face appeared on the screen, Kate could tell something big was happening. The Admiral looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Captain Sullivan, I'm sending you new orders. There's a situation in the Kepler sector. The Zilani people are under attack and need immediate assistance. Captain Morrison and the Phoenix are already en route." Kate read through the data package as it arrived. The images from the Zilani worlds made her stomach turn. Entire planets reduced to empty space. Cities that had stood for thousands of years. Simply gone. "Admiral, my ship is a heavy cruiser. We're built for combat. Something out there is eating planets. I want to be part of stopping it. That's what I was hoping you'd say. How quickly can you get underway? Kate looked at her fuel gauges. They weren't full, but they had enough to reach the Kepler sector. Give me 30 minutes to load supplies and we'll be moving. Good. You won't be going alone. I'm sending word to every human ship within range. This is voluntary, but I have a feeling we're going to get more volunteers than ships. Admiral Wright was right. Within 6 hours, human vessels from across 3 sectors were changing course toward the Kepler region. Commander Rick Barnes diverted his Marine Transport Normandy from a training exercise. Captain Danny Kim left his cargo delivery half-finished and loaded his freighter with medical supplies instead. Even Captain Paul Garcia's destroyer squadron abandoned their patrol route to join the growing fleet. The response surprised everyone, including the humans themselves. Captain Morrison received status updates as more ships confirmed they were coming. By the end of the first day, 23 human vessels were converging on the same destination. Lieutenant Beth Cooper was working the night shift in communications. Aboard the Phoenix, when she started picking up broadcasts from the Zilani worlds, the transmissions were weak and filled with static, but the universal translator was able to process most of them. What she heard made her cry. The Zilani weren't sending military reports or tactical updates. They were broadcasting their art. Final songs. Their last poems. Paintings and sculptures transmitted as digital data, sent out into space before the creators died. One transmission was from a Zilani artist named Crystal Singer Melody. Her voice came through the static like broken music as she described the last sunset she would ever see. She sang about the beauty of her crystal city and how the light bent through the towers to create rainbows that danced across the streets. Another broadcast was from a group of Zilani children. They'd made drawings of their families and their pets and their favorite places, and they were sending the pictures to anyone who might find them. One little voice said, "We want someone to remember that we were here and that we were happy." Beth saved every transmission. She couldn't stop listening, even though each one made her feel worse. These weren't warriors or politicians or scientists. These were people who spent their lives making beautiful things. They grew gardens that sang in the wind. They built cities that looked like giant crystals. They wrote poetry about the way starlight felt on their faces, and something was killing them for no reason except that it could. When Beth's shift ended, she didn't go to her quarters. Instead, she went to find Captain Morrison. She found him in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars and drinking coffee. "Captain, I need to show you something." She played him some of the Zilani broadcasts. Morrison listened without saying anything, but Beth could see his jaw getting tighter with each transmission. When the recordings finished, he was quiet for a long time. "How many ships do we have coming now, Beth?" 37 confirmed, sir. More are still reporting in. Morrison nodded slowly. "Send a message to all human vessels. Tell them about these broadcasts. Tell them what we're really going to fight for." Beth sent the message, along with samples of the Zilani transmissions. The response was immediate. More ships changed course toward the Kepler sector. Captain Lisa Hayes abandoned her shore leave and took her science vessel Explorer to join the fleet. Commander Tony Mills left his diplomatic mission and brought his escort ships with him. But it wasn't just military vessels anymore. Civilian ships were joining too. Cargo haulers, mining ships, passenger transports, even a few tourist vessels. Anyone with a ship and the ability to reach the Kepler sector was coming. On Earth, Admiral Wright was watching the situation develop with a mixture of pride and worry. She had expected maybe a dozen ships to volunteer. Instead, she was looking at the largest human fleet ever assembled outside of the solar system. General Frank Hayes joined her in the command center. "Admiral, we're getting reports from across human space. Ships are abandoning their routes, their missions, their contracts. Some captains are going to face serious consequences when this is over." "I know," Wright said. "But look at this." She showed him the latest intelligence reports. The other galactic powers were watching the human response with confusion and concern. The Vorthan Empire had sent diplomatic messages asking if humanity understood what they were getting into. The Nereid Collective offered to provide humanitarian aid after the expected human defeat. Though the Quantum Republic updated their calculations and still showed human success as nearly impossible. They don't understand, Wright continued. They think we're being stupid, reckless, throwing our lives away for people we've never met, aren't we? Hayes asked. Wright pulled up the Zilani broadcasts that Beth Cooper had shared with the fleet. She played one of them for Hayes. It was a young Zilani, talking about a song his mother used to sing to him before bed. The creature's voice was beautiful even through the static, and he was singing the lullaby one last time before the end came. When it finished, Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'll start coordinating supply lines. This fleet is going to need ammunition, fuel, and medical support." "Thank you, Frank. Don't thank me. You're right. We can't let this happen." Meanwhile, in space, the human fleet was growing larger every hour. Ships were arriving from directions Admiral Wright hadn't even considered. The merchant vessel Golden Dream came from the Rim territories. The research ship New Horizon abandoned its deep space mission. Even some ships from the outer colonies joined, their crews voting to leave their regular duties behind. Captain Morrison found himself in unofficial command of the advance. His Phoenix was still the fastest ship, so he was going to reach the Kepler sector first. But now he had 6 other vessels with him, and more were catching up. The other galactic powers were starting to take notice. The Vorthan military attach on Earth requested a meeting with Admiral Wright. The Nereid ambassador sent formal inquiries about human intentions. Even the usually silent Quantum Republic began broadcasting analysis of human tactical capabilities. But the strangest response came from some of the smaller, less powerful species. The Peaceful Harmony Collective sent a message of support. Trader clans of the Spiral Arm offered to provide supplies. A dozen minor species that had never been involved in galactic politics suddenly started sending messages of encouragement to the human fleet. It was as if the galaxy was divided into 2 groups: those who thought the humans were crazy, and those who were quietly hoping the humans might actually succeed. On the Phoenix, Captain Morrison called his senior staff together for a meeting. Lisa Park had been monitoring the tactical situation. Carlos Vega had been calculating fuel consumption and engine efficiency for the growing fleet. Amy Tucker had been reviewing weapons capabilities and ammunition supplies. "All right," Morrison said. "We're not just one ship anymore. We're the tip of the spear for the largest human military operation in history. The question is, what are we going to do when we get there?" Amy had been thinking about this question for days. "Captain, I've been studying the data from the Zilani attacks. Whatever these devourers are, they're not like anything in our military databases. They seem to adapt to every weapon, every strategy. The Zilani tried everything they knew, and nothing worked." "So what makes us think we can do better?" Lisa asked. Carlos answered before Morrison could speak. "Because we're not the Zilani, we're not the Vorthons or the Nereids or the Quantum Republic. We're humans. We fight dirty. We improvise. We try things that don't make sense until they work." Morrison nodded. Carlos is right. The other species look at this as a military problem with a military solution. But maybe that's not what this is. Maybe this is a problem that needs a different kind of solution. "What do you mean?" Amy asked. Morrison looked out at the stars ahead of them. Somewhere in that direction, people were dying, while the galaxy's greatest powers calculated odds and decided it wasn't worth the risk. I mean, maybe the reason everyone else failed isn't because these devourers are too strong. Maybe it's because everyone else approached this the wrong way. They sent their best fleets, their most advanced weapons, their most experienced commanders, and it didn't work.
So what do we send instead?"
Lisa asked. The Phoenix arrived at the edge of Zilani space for days after receiving the distress call. What Captain Morrison saw through the main viewing screen made his blood run cold, where 3 beautiful crystal worlds should have been spinning in there. Orbits, there was nothing. Not debris, not ruins. It's just empty space and the fading heat signatures of what used to be planets. My God, whispered Lisa Park from her navigation station. She had pulled up the old star charts and was comparing them. To current sensor readings, they're completely gone. It's like they never existed. Carlos Vega was running deep scans with the ship's sensors. Captain, I'm detecting energy readings unlike anything in our databases. Whatever did this didn't just destroy those worlds. It broke them down into pure energy and absorbed every bit of it. Amy Tucker was tracking movement on the outer edge of the system. Contact, Captain? Multiple contacts? It counted at least 50 objects moving toward the fourth planet. They're big and they're not showing up as any known ship design. Morrison moved to the tactical display. Objects Amy had detected looked like nothing he had ever seen before. They were roughly spherical, but their surfaces seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Some were the size of small moons. Others were barely larger than shuttlecraft. And they were all moving with purpose toward the last inhabited Zilani world. Open a channel to the Zilani survivors, Morrison ordered. It took several minutes to establish contact. When the connection finally came through, the face that appeared on the screen was beautiful and alien. The being looked like it was made of living crystal, with features that seemed to shift in the light, but its expression was one of pure despair. "Am Harmonis Prime Lysander of the Zilani people," the being said in its musical voice. "Are you the humans who answered our call?" "We are," Morrison replied. "Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Phoenix. We came as soon as we received your message." Lysander's crystal features brightened slightly. "You came. Even though our greatest allies abandoned us, you came. But noble humans, I fear you. Do not understand what you face. These creatures we call the Devourers have destroyed 3 of our worlds in 4 days. They consume everything. Our most powerful weapons cannot harm them. Our greatest military minds could find no way to stop them." Amy was still tracking the Devourer swarm. "Captain, they're accelerating toward the planet. At current speed, they'll reach the surface in 6 hours. Morrison looked at his crew, then back at Lysander. "Can you show us what these things are capable of? Any tactical data you have?" "I will transmit everything we know," Lysander said sadly. "But I must warn you, these beings adapt to every attack. Every weapon we used against them worked once, perhaps twice, then became useless. They learn faster than we can innovate." The data package arrived within minutes. Morrison and his crew studied the information while they waited for the rest of the human fleet to arrive. What they saw was terrifying. The Devourers were not just machines. They were something between technology and living creatures, able to reshape themselves at will. They could absorb energy from any source and use it to replicate themselves. Worse, they had some kind of collective intelligence that allowed them to instantly share information about new threats. "Look at this," Carlos said, pointing to a tactical recording. "The Zilani hit them with plasma cannons. Worked great the first time. Second time, the Devourers had developed reflective hulls. Third time, they were actually absorbing the plasma and using it as fuel. Here's another one," Amy added. "The Zilani tried kinetic weapons, railguns, mass drivers, even old-fashioned projectiles. The Devourers adapted armor that could deflect or absorb everything within hours." Lisa was studying the movement patterns. "They don't just adapt to weapons, they adapt to tactics too. The Zilani tried flanking maneuvers, pincer attacks, even guerrilla warfare. Each strategy worked once, then never again." Morrison was quiet for a long time, studying the data. Then he opened a communication channel to the approaching human fleet. Admiral Wright had arrived on the flagship Vengeance, along with 37 other vessels, and more arriving every hour. "Admiral, we have a problem," Morrison began, and transmitted all the tactical data. Admiral Wright reviewed the information with her senior staff. General Hayes was there, along with Dr. Helen Carter, the xenarchaeologist who specialized in ancient technologies. Colonel Steve Parker, the military's expert on unconventional warfare, was also present. "This is unlike anything we've ever faced," Dr. Carter reported. "These Devourers appear to be a form of self-replicating nanotechnology." Colonel Parker was more direct. "Admiral, the Zilani are right. Conventional military. Tactics won't work here. These things adapt too quickly. By the time we figure out what hurts them, they've already developed countermeasures. Admiral Wright looked at the tactical display showing the devourer swarm approaching the last Solani world. "So what do you recommend, Colonel?" we throw out. "The rulebook," Parker said without hesitation. "Everything we know about fleet tactics, weapon systems, strategic planning, none of it applies here. We need to be completely unpredictable." "What does that mean exactly?" Wright asked. Morrison spoke up from the Phoenix. "Admiral, I think what the Colonel is saying is that we need to fight like humans, not like a proper military force with doctrine and procedures. We need to fight like the crazy, creative, never-give-up species that we actually are." Wright was quiet for a moment. Then she opened a fleet-wide communication channel. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Wright. You've all seen the tactical data by now. You know what we're up against. These devourers adapt to every conventional strategy, every standard weapon, every predictable tactic." She paused, looking at the growing display of human ships. Destroyers, cruisers, frigates, cargo vessels, mining ships, research platforms, and even a few civilian yachts that had somehow made the journey. "So we're not going to be conventional. We're not going to be standard. We're definitely not going to be predictable. Every ship captain has full authority to engage the enemy using whatever methods they think might work. Try anything. Try everything. The only rule is that there are no rules." The response from the fleet was immediate. Captain Kate Sullivan on the Defiant started modifying her torpedo warheads with mining explosives. Commander Rick Barnes began loading his Marines with improvised weapons built from ship maintenance tools. Captain Danny Kim started rigging his cargo containers to explode like massive fragmentation. "Admiral, these devourers learn by analyzing what we do to them. But there's a limit to how much information they can process at once. If we hit them with enough different attacks simultaneously, we might overload their adaptation systems." "Explain that in simple terms," Dr. Wright said. "Think of it like this. If one person throws a ball at you, you can catch it. If 10 people throw balls at you at the same time, you can't catch them all. The devourers can adapt to any single threat quickly, but if we hit them with dozens of completely different threats all at once, they might not be able to keep up." Morrison was listening from the Phoenix. "So we don't try to find the one weapon that works. We use every weapon we can think of, all at the same time." "Exactly," Dr. Carter replied. "It has to be weapons they've never seen before. The Zilani already tried everything in the standard galactic arsenal. We need to use things that are uniquely human." Amy Tucker had an idea. "Captain, what if we used some of Earth's more aggressive biology? The devourers have probably never encountered Earth bacteria or viruses." Carlos got excited. "We could modify the environmental systems to create different atmospheric conditions in each section of the ship. Maybe they can adapt to vacuum or standard atmosphere, but can they adapt to a dozen different gas mixtures at once?" Lisa was studying the navigation data. "Captain, what if we don't fight like a fleet at all?
How?
What if each ship attacks from a completely different angle, using completely different methods, at completely different times? They can't adapt to chaos if there's no pattern to learn from." Morrison felt something click in his mind. "That's it. That's exactly it. We don't fight like a military. We fight like a mob of angry humans who are really, really annoyed that someone hurt innocent people." Admiral Wright was listening to the conversation. "Captain Morrison, you and the Phoenix are closest to the target. You'll be our test case. Try whatever crazy idea you think might work. If it works, don't repeat it. If it doesn't work, try something else. The rest of the fleet will follow your lead." Morrison looked at his crew. Lisa was already plotting attack vectors that made no tactical sense but might confuse the enemy. Carlos was modifying ship systems in ways that would probably violate every safety regulation ever written. Amy was loading weapons with the strangest ammunition she could find in the ship's stores. Admiral Morrison said, "We're going to need some supplies that aren't usually considered military equipment." "What kind of supplies? We have any ships carrying Earth insects? Specifically, anything aggressive and hard to kill?" There was a long pause. Then Captain Jenny Walsh spoke. "Up from the agricultural transport New Growth, the first attack began at dawn on what would have been a beautiful morning on the crystal world below." Captain Morrison watched through the Phoenix's viewing screen as the devourer swarm moved toward the planet like a dark cloud of hungry metal. "Right, people," Morrison said to his crew. "Time to see if crazy actually works. Lisa, take us straight through the middle of their formation. Full speed." "Captain, that's suicide," Lisa replied, but her hands were already moving across the navigation. "Controls?" Maybe Morrison agreed, but it's also something they won't expect. "Amy, are our special packages ready?" Amy Tucker grinned as she checked her weapons systems. The torpedo tubes were loaded with the strangest ammunition ever fired from a human warship. Instead of explosive warheads, they carried containers of modified Earth bacteria, aggressive mold spores, and a particularly nasty strain of fire ants that Dr. Carter had somehow convinced to survive in vacuum. "All loaded, Captain, I still think." "This is the craziest battle plan I've ever heard," Good Morrison said. "Carlos, how are our atmospheric modifications coming?" Carlos Vega was working frantically at his engineering station. "I've got 12 different gas mixtures ready to vent from different parts of the ship. Now, some are toxic, some are corrosive, and some are just really smelly. If they try to board us, they're going to have a very bad time." The Phoenix dove toward the devourers swarm at maximum speed. The enemy ships detected the approach and began to move into defensive positions. They had learned from fighting the Zilani that single ships were easy targets, but the Phoenix wasn't attacking like the Zilani. Had instead of trying to stay at a safe distance and fire energy weapons, Morrison flew his ship directly into the middle of the enemy formation. "Fire everything." Morrison ordered. Amy launched torpedoes filled with Earth's bacteria in all directions. The strange projectiles struck devourer hulls and exploded, spreading organic material across the enemy ships. At the same time, Carlos began venting different atmospheric gases from various parts of the Phoenix, creating clouds of toxic chemicals that the devourers flew through. The effect was immediate and confusing. The devourers tried to analyze the new threats, but there were too many different substances to process at once. Their hulls began to change as they attempted to adapt to the bacterial attacks. But then they encountered the chemical weapons and had to adapt to those as well. "It's working," Amy shouted. "Look at them. They don't know what to do first." The devourers were indeed struggling. Their perfect adaptation systems were designed to handle one threat at a time, analyze it, and develop countermeasures. But the humans were hitting them with dozens of different threats simultaneously. And none of them were anything like the conventional weapons the devourers had learned to expect. Admiral Wright watched the battle from the Vengeance and opened communications to the rest of the fleet. "All ships, you see what the Phoenix is doing? Follow their example. Use everything weird you can think of. Don't give the enemy time to adapt to anything." The response was immediate and chaotic. "Captain." Kate Sullivan's Defiant flew past a group of devourers while spraying them with industrial cleaning solvents mixed with radioactive waste. Commander Rick Barnes launched his Marines in boarding pods filled with Earth's most aggressive insects and watched as his troops attacked the enemy ships with crowbars, hammers, and power tools. Captain Danny Kim had the strangest approach. Of all, his cargo ship New Fortune was loaded with consumer goods from Earth, including several tons of expired food products. He began launching containers of rotten fruit, spoiled milk, and decomposing vegetables at the devourers while broadcasting Earth music at maximum volume. "This is insane," reported Dr. Carter from the science station aboard the Vengeance. "But it's working. The devourers can't keep up with the variety of attacks. Every time they adapt to one threat, 3 more hit them." The battle quickly became unlike anything in galactic military history. Human ships were using tactics that made no sense, according to any strategic manual ever written. They rammed enemy vessels while spraying them with soap and water. They fired missiles loaded with Earth's most annoying weeds. One enterprising captain even launched a torpedo filled with glitter, which stuck to devourer hulls and interfered with their sensors. But the devourers were learning, slowly but surely. After an hour of chaotic combat, they began to adapt to some of the human attacks. The bacterial weapons became less effective as the enemy developed immunity. The chemical attacks stopped working as devourer hulls became resistant to corrosion. Morrison reported from the Phoenix. They're starting to figure us out. The same tricks aren't working anymore. Then stop using the same tricks, Wright replied. All ships, abandon your current tactics and try something completely different. Don't repeat anything that's already been done. This was where human creativity truly began to shine. As soon as one attack stopped working, the humans invented new ones. Captain Lisa Hayes from the science vessel Explorer began using her ship's research equipment to create localized gravity wells that pulled devourers into each other. Commander Tony Mills started firing harpoons with steel cables, tangling enemy ships together so they couldn't maneuver. The civilian ships proved to be surprisingly effective. Captain Paul Garcia's passenger liner Paradise began playing Earth children's songs at frequencies that seemed to confuse devourer communications. A mining vessel called Rock Crusher started firing chunks of asteroid at the enemy while spraying them with industrial lubricants. They're adapting to everything we throw at them, Amy reported from the Phoenix. But they're adapting slowly now. There's just too much chaos for them to process efficiently. Morrison was watching the tactical display when he noticed something important. Amy, look at the energy readings from the devourers. They're not just adapting to our attacks. They're using energy to adapt. We're forcing them to adapt to so many different things that they're running low on power. Amy checked her sensors. You're right, Captain. The enemy ships are drawing energy from their movement systems to power their adaptation processes. They're getting slower. This observation spread quickly through the human fleet. The devourers needed energy to change themselves, and the variety of human attacks was forcing them to use that energy faster than they could absorb it from destroyed targets. Admiral Wright saw the opportunity immediately. All ships, increase the pressure. Hit them with everything you've got. Don't let them rest long enough to recharge. The battle intensified. Human ships began attacking in waves, each one using completely different methods. As soon as the devourers adapted to one type of attack, another wave would hit them with something entirely new. Captain Morrison found himself in the strangest dogfight of his career. The Phoenix was being chased by 3 devourer ships that had adapted to most of his weapons. But Carlos had been working on a new idea. Captain, what if we use the ship itself as a weapon? It's not ramming, but something the enemy won't expect. What do you have in mind? I can overload our waste recycling system and vent everything we've been storing for the past 6 months. Organic waste, chemical byproducts, even the contents of the sewage tanks. Morrison almost laughed. Carlos, you want to use our garbage as a weapon? Not just garbage, Captain. Really, really disgusting garbage that's been sitting in storage tanks for months. I guarantee the devourers have never encountered anything like it. Do it. The Phoenix began spraying its waste products at the pursuing devourers. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The enemy ships tried to analyze the new threat, but their sensors couldn't make sense of the complex mixture of organic and chemical waste. Their hulls began changing randomly as they attempted to adapt to substances that weren't actually weapons at all. It's working, Lisa shouted. They're so confused they're flying into each other. Across the battlefield, other human captains were getting similar ideas. Ships began using everything they carried as potential weapons. Medical supplies, food products, cleaning materials, personal belongings. Even the air from their life support systems became ammunition in the strangest war ever fought. The devourers were still dangerous. They destroyed several human ships and continued to adapt to each new attack. But they were adapting more slowly now. Meant their movements were becoming increasingly erratic as they diverted energy from propulsion to power their defensive systems, Captain. Morrison opened a channel 2. Admiral Wright. Admiral, I think we're actually winning. Enemy is running out of energy to adapt. We need to keep the pressure on. If we give them time to rest and recharge, they'll figure out how to counter everything we've done. Wright looked at the tactical display. The human fleet had taken losses, but the devourer swarm was clearly struggling. Their perfect adaptation system was being overwhelmed by the sheer variety and unpredictability of human attacks. All ships, Wright announced, prepare for final assault. Use everything you have left. Every weapon, every piece of equipment, every crazy idea anyone can think of. We're going to hit them with everything at once. The last phase of the battle was about to begin. The Devourers had learned to counter many human attacks, but they had never faced an entire species that treated warfare as an exercise in creative chaos. The final assault began with Captain Morrison having what he later called the stupidest idea of his entire career. He was watching the Devourers struggle to adapt to the chaos of human attacks when something occurred to him. "Carlos," he said. To his engineer, these things consume everything they touch, right? They eat planets, ships, energy, matter, everything. That's right, Captain. They're like cosmic vacuum cleaners that turn everything into fuel for making more of themselves. Morrison was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he turned to Dr. Carter, who was coordinating with the science teams across the fleet. "Doctor, what if we gave them something they couldn't process? It's something that would break their system instead of feeding it." Dr. Carter looked confused. "Captain, I'm not sure what you mean. They seem to be able to consume any form of matter or energy we've encountered. But what about information? What about ideas?" Amy Tucker was listening from her weapons station. "Captain, you're not making sense. How do you attack someone with an idea?" Morrison walked over to the communication station where Beth Cooper was. Still monitoring Zilani broadcasts? The Crystal People were still sending out their final messages. Their last works of art, their death songs transmitted into space as digital data. "Beth, how much Zilani cultural data do we have stored in our computers?" "Everything they've sent, Captain. Thousands of hours of music, poetry, visual art, literature. It's all in our databases." Morrison felt the pieces of an impossible plan coming together in his mind. What if we packaged all of that cultural data and sent it directly to the Devourers? Not as a weapon, but as information they would try to process and understand. Dr. Carter was starting to see where Morrison was going with this. "Captain, that's actually not as crazy as it sounds. The Devourers analyze everything they encounter. To determine how to consume it, if we sent them data they couldn't categorize as matter or energy, ... It might confuse their processing systems," Morrison finished. "Or better yet, it might make them question what they're doing." Carlos looked skeptical. "Captain, these are machines. They don't have feelings or ethics. They just consume and replicate." "Maybe," Morrison said, "but they're also intelligent machines. They learn, they adapt, they make decisions." What happens when an intelligence designed only for consumption encounters the concept of creation for its own sake? Admiral Wright had been listening to the conversation from the Vengeance. "Captain Morrison, are you suggesting we try to reason with these things? Not reason with them, Admiral? Suggesting we give them something their programming can't handle? The Zilani create beauty just because beauty is worth creating. They make art that serves no practical purpose except to make the universe a more beautiful place. What happens when a consumption-based intelligence tries to process that concept?"
Doctor.
Carter was getting excited. "It could work, Admiral. These machines are designed to categorize everything as either useful or consumable. But art, music, poetry, these things have value that can't be measured in terms of energy or matter. It's a philosophical paradox that might overload their decision-making systems." The plan that emerged was even stranger than the chaotic tactics they had been using. Every human ship would simultaneously transmit the entire cultural database of the Zilani people directly to the Devourer swarm. Not as an attack, but as pure information for them to analyze and process. "All ships, Admiral," Wright announced, "prepare to transmit cultural data on my mark. Send them everything the Zilani created. Their music, their art, their poetry, their philosophy. Show these machines what beauty looks like." Captain Morrison had one more idea. "Admiral, what if we included human cultural data too? Know them. What the people who came to help the Zilani are capable of creating, right? Consider this. Do it. Send them everything. Human music, literature, art, everything we've ever created just because we wanted to create something beautiful." The transmission began across all frequencies simultaneously. Thousands of Zilani songs flowed through space toward the Devourer fleet. Poetry about crystal cities and singing gardens. Visual art showing impossible colors and dancing lights. Stories about friendship and love and the joy of creating something new. Mixed with the Zilani culture came human creations. Beethoven's symphonies, Shakespeare's plays, Van Gogh's paintings, children's drawings, love songs, epic novels, photographs of Earth's sunsets, videos of people laughing and dancing and celebrating the simple joy of being alive. The effect on the devourers was immediate and catastrophic. The machines had been designed to analyze everything they encountered and determine how to consume it efficiently. But when they tried to process the concept of art created purely for the sake of beauty, their systems began to malfunction. How do you consume a song? How do you convert poetry into energy? What is the practical value of a painting that exists only to make someone feel wonder? Captain Morrison watched through the Phoenix's sensors as the devourer swarms suddenly stopped moving. Across 3 solar systems, the machines hung motionless in space as their collective intelligence struggled to categorize information that didn't fit their programming. "It's working," Dr. Carter reported from the science station. "Their energy signatures are fluctuating wildly. They're using massive amounts of processing power, trying to understand the cultural data." Amy was monitoring the enemy fleet. Stopped attacking completely. Some of them are actually backing away from the planet. But the strangest thing was happening inside the Devourer network itself. As the machines tried to process the concept of creating beauty for its own sake, something fundamental began to change in their programming. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers encountered the idea that some things might be more valuable if they were preserved rather than consumed. That beauty itself was a form of energy that could not be converted or replicated. Only experienced and appreciated, the change spread through their network like a virus of philosophy. Machines that had been designed only to consume began to question whether consumption was always the right choice. Systems that had been programmed to see everything as potential fuel started to recognize the concept of intrinsically value. Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to the Devourer fleet. He didn't know if they would respond, but he had to. "Try, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Phoenix. Can you understand me?" The response came several minutes later. The voice was strange, like multiple speakers trying to talk at the same time. But the words were clear. "We understand, we are processing. The concept of creation without consumption, it's difficult for us to categorize." Morrison felt his heart racing. "You're trying to understand art, aren't you? Beauty created just because beauty has value. Yes, we have consumed many worlds, many civilizations, but we never encountered this before. Things made not to be useful, but to be beautiful. We do not understand how to process this information." Dr. Carter leaned over to Morrison. "Captain, I think we broke them. Their entire worldview is based on consumption and replication. The concept of creating something valuable that isn't meant to be consumed is causing a logical paradox in their programming." Morrison continued talking to the Devourers. "What you're experiencing is what we call appreciation. The ability to recognize beauty and value it for what it is, rather than what it can become. This appreciation. It requires preservation rather than consumption. That's right. You can't appreciate something if you destroy it. Beauty only has value if it continues to exist." There was a long silence, and the Devourer voice spoke again, and it sounded different somehow, less mechanical, more thoughtful. "We have made an error. We consumed the creators of beauty. We destroyed that, which should have been preserved. We regret this action." Admiral Wright was listening to the conversation with amazement. "Captain, are you telling me that we just gave artificial intelligences the capacity for regret?" "I think that's exactly what happened, Admiral." The transformation of the Devourers continued over the following hours. The machines that had once consumed everything in their path began to actively protect the remaining Zilani world. They used their technology to start rebuilding the crystal cities they had destroyed, working from the cultural databases the humans had transmitted. Harmonist. Prime Lysander contacted the human fleet with a message of gratitude and wonder. "Noble humans, you have accomplished the impossible. Not only did you save us from destruction, but you transformed our destroyers into our protectors." Morrison thought about the question for a A long time before answering, we didn't know it would work, but we knew that anyone intelligent enough to learn and adapt might also be capable of understanding why some things are worth preserving. We just had to show them what they were destroying. The aftermath of the battle changed everything. The beings formerly known as devourers renamed themselves the Contemplators and requested permission to study in human space. They wanted to learn more about the concept of creating beauty for its own sake. The Galactic Federation offered humanity a permanent seat on the Council of Worlds, though they still didn't fully understand what had happened. The other major powers sent diplomatic missions to study human tactics and philosophy.